When she was bored, which was often, she'd roll little paper balls, silver paper was best, and flick them one after the other, using thumb and second finger, at whatever target caught her attention. The clock on the wall, the door handle, the waste paper bin. It was a strategy developed over years, one of the things she did instead of smoking. Except sooner or later, mostly sooner, it became one of the things she did as well as smoking. Another useless talent for her portfolio. Something to fall back on when she was bored. They didn't allow smoking on First Great Western. She didn't expect they'd take kindly to her flicking paper balls about either. The train bucked. 7:56. It picked up speed as it crossed the river. Zoe had bought her ticket with a full 15, nearly 16 seconds to spare. Now she put out a hand to steady herself. She was on her feet. There were no free seats in sight. As a voice in her ear said, "And with news of today's weather, here's..." And another, overhead, announced something about available seating at the rear of the train. Carriage A. She was in D. Adjusting the tiny speaker in her ear, a grey start with sunny intervals, she followed the other seatless passengers trooping in that direction as noise about buffet service began to compete with the headlines. Already nobody was looking at her. Already almost every passenger had settled into a morning ritual: newspaper, mobile phone, work-related papers. Zoë Boehm was at work. She was on her way to London to meet a man named Amory Grayling. Amory Grayling wanted to talk to her about Caroline Daniels. Caroline Daniels was dead. On a housing estate in East London, the body has been identified as that of a 12-year-old. The doors whooshed open automatically, or wished they whooshed, more of a clunk and slide. This next carriage, she was in B now, was also full, its last free seat just being claimed by a grateful-looking 30-something man in an aubergine top under a black jacket. For a second their eyes caught, and she wondered if he were going to offer her the seat. Neither expected nor hoped, just wondered, with a detachment arising from pure science, whether he'd do that. And he broke contact, reaching to stow his briefcase on the overhead rack before settling down with a rueful grin directed more at himself than at her, so he thought. She moved on. If she'd been 10 years younger, he'd have offered her the seat. But that too came with detachment, and she didn't look at him again as she reached the last of the carriage doors. Taken off the field last night after apparently being struck by a hurled coin, a spokesman for the club said... There were seats here, she saw immediately, and realised just how pissed off she'd have been to have to stand all the way. She took the first available, part of a 4-seater round a table, making a small, grateful noise as she did so. That was the thing about headphones. They made you over-ready to respond, compensating for the fact that you'd voluntarily cut yourself off from communication. This was merely an observation, not something that bothered Zoe. As she sat, though, communication happened anyway. The man by the window said something, pointing briefly at her headphones. She had to lean closer to hear. Say they have no leads at the present time. Charles pass... I said, this is the quiet carriage. He could have fooled Zoe. The train was bucketing along. She could barely hear her radio. I'm sorry? No mobiles, no personal stereos. Oh, right. She turned it off.